Hello, and welcome back to another episode of The Pilot Principle. This is the podcast where we take a look at just the first episode of a series, the pilot, and then use it to decide if we should watch the entire series, or at least the second episode. Firstly, an apology because this Barbie cannot do it all, and I have officially finished with my annual movie watching challenge, which took up the entire bulk of May, and I will get into later on in the episode. But just to let you know that we will now be back to our regularly scheduled weekly episodes. I have seen in my absence that there has been a heap of new listeners, so if that is you, then do me a favour and say hello by giving the Pilot Principle a follow on your audio streamer of choice. Okay, let's get this episode going because today we are analysing episode 1 of Netflix's new crime drama, Eric. This is the series synopsis for Eric according to Netflix UK. A tenacious cop enters the dark underbelly of 80s New York to track down 2 missing children and finds a big apple that's rotten to its core. I really enjoyed the play of words. Okay, before we look at the pilot episode itself in detail, let's look at the credits. As we all know, I love the credits. So let's start with the pilot title, and sadly, there is none. It's simply called episode 1. Does that count as a pilot title? Do you know what? No, it doesn't. Episode 1 does not count. This is the pilot synopsis for episode 1. Vincent's son, Edgar, has an idea for Good Day Sunshine's new puppet, but before he can convince his father, the boy disappears on the way to school. Not gonna lie, no offense to whoever wrote that, but the grammar is just way off. Like, what person are we in? Vincent's son Edgar, and then suddenly the boy. It just read ick to me. But I'm a writer, and so stuff like that can irritate me. But you know, whatever. If you didn't mind it, you didn't mind it. If you didn't notice, then oops, I made you notice. The episode length for the pilot is a digestible 53 minutes, and we also have a bingeable 6 episodes for the series length. The pilot, as well as the series itself, was written and created by Abi Morgan. And Abi Morgan has written for film The Iron Lady, Shame, and Suffragette. And for television, she's written River, All About Marriage, and The Split. So her series, The Split, has recently come to an end. However, there will be a Split TV special that was recently announced, and I'm very excited for. And she's also going to be writing Bridget Jones' Mad About the Boy, so the 4th installment of the Bridget Jones movie franchise. The pilot episode, episode 1, was directed by Lucy Forbes, and Forbes has directed episodes of The End of the Effing World and This Is Going to Hurt. The pilot episode of Eric, episode 1, stars Benedict Cumberbatch, who plays Vincent Anderson, and Cumberbatch has starred in The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar, The Power of the Dog, The Courier, of course, Sherlock. We have McKinley Bletcher III, who plays Detective Michael LeDroit, and Bletcher III starred in the live-action adaptation of One Piece, We Own This City, and Ozark. Gabby Hoffman plays Cassie Anderson, and Hoffman has starred in Winning Time, The Rise of the Lakers Dynasty, Transparent, and Girls. And finally, we have Ivan Howe, who plays Edgar Anderson, and this is his debut role. So clap, clap, clap. Congratulations, Ivan Howe. Now, in terms of what made me want to watch the series, do you know what? Predominantly, it was Abi Morgan because I love her series, The Split. It's one of my favourite British television dramas. A, because for once, it's not about police stuff. It's about a bunch of family lawyers and their own personal family dramas that they're going through. And it's just, it stars Nicola Walker and Stephen Mangan. And it's a great show. If you can watch it, go ahead and watch it. Come back and tell me that you don't like it because that would just be a lie. And the other reason that I wanted to watch the program is, well, I'm not going to lie to you, there actually hasn't been that many new releases out in May, which is also part of the reason why I was slacking with the upload. So this was new, this looked interesting, and I jumped right on it. Okay, we're all warmed up. Let's get into discussing the first 10 minutes of episode 1 of Eric. Why the first 10 minutes, you ask? Well, as it's been a while, I will remind you that the opening 10 minutes are ideally constructed to draw an audience into watching the whole pilot and then going on to hopefully watch the entire series. If the first 10 minutes is a dud, then the odds are, as an audience, you'll remain switched off for most of the pilot and you are less likely to watch the whole series. There are, of course, exceptions to the rule, but let's not worry about that today. Okay, so the first 10 minutes of episode 1 of Eric goes like this. We meet Vincent Anderson, who is at a press conference making an appeal for information about his son Edgar, who was last seen 48 hours ago. We then rewind 2 days and meet Edgar, a quiet child who is hanging out at a television studio where his dad, Vincent, works. Vincent is a puppeteer and creator of the children's puppet show Good Day Sunshine. Vincent and his team are having a creative dispute about the direction of their show and where that should go in, and we sort of see part of this discussion slash argument through Edgar's eyes. When Vincent and Edgar get home, Edgar goes off to his room while Vincent rants to his wife, Cassie, about work and the state of New York. While he's in his room, Edgar, whose walls are filled with drawings and cutouts, continues to work on his puppet idea, a big furry monster called Eric. And that's the first 10 minutes, and that is where we shall leave it. So I don't know about you, but for me, as an intro, it wasn't the most engaging 10 minutes. In fact, it isn't until around the 17-minute mark where things start to change. We watch Edgar turn the corner and disappear, and the start of his 48 hours since he was last seen begins. I would say that there was a seedy undertone to the first 10 minutes. I felt like loads of hints were being dropped, pointing us towards the wider arc and story to come. And in those first 10 minutes, we do really get a sense of both Vincent's character and of Edgar's character. So that's also really important. So, not the most engaging opening, but I feel like the information we were given gave us some good building blocks for moving forward. Okay, let's look at the main characters. And I would say there are about three-ish, 2.5. But the first main character is Vincent Anderson. And in a nutshell, Vincent Anderson is a douchebag. He's a bad colleague, he's a bad husband, and I wouldn't call him the best father either. He is dealing with the possible cancellation of his puppet show, but he is stubborn and doesn't want to change things in order to appeal to the big bosses and the people with deep pockets. And so, in a way, he's self sabotaging his own show. We do know that Vincent comes from money. His dad is a rich real estate tycoon. We never see him, but we hear about him, and he is noted in the local paper. Also, Vincent drinks a lot. We don't know why, but it's what he do. As I said, he isn't the greatest father himself, and I would say he's a bit more of a half-assed father. One of the things that I really noticed when watching Vincent and Edgar together is when they were coming home from the studio, Vincent doesn't hold Edgar's hand or make him walk next to him or in front of him. He kind of just allows his son to tail behind him as they're walking, which I just thought was really odd behavior as a parent who's walking their kid through New York City. Later on in the episode, we watch as Vincent makes Edgar pitch his new puppet idea to him. He makes him quote Tolstoy and says that he shouldn't be coddled. And it's sort of giving daddy issues that he's now projecting onto his own son, you know? There is definitely something to uncover about Vincent. That's the idea that I get from the pilot episode. He definitely has some suspicious moments. So, for example, a fresh cut has appeared on his head the morning that Edgar disappears. He could have potentially got into a domestic with his wife. We don't know. But again, suspicious behavior. He tries to hide it. He plays it off like it's nothing. When it is time for Vincent and his colleagues to present a new sort of formatted show to the big bosses, he does what he does best and is incredibly selfish about it. And then later on, a colleague says to him, "Great time for you to go nuts again, Vinny." And I said, "Again? Go nuts again? What do we not know about this man? Is that the reason that he drinks so much? Is that the reason he doesn't like his father? Could this all lead into why his son has disappeared? I don't know, because all of this could just culminate in being that Vincent Anderson is an unlikable human being, but that doesn't always make you a killer. Next on the character list, we have Detective LeDroit, and he is a former vice, now missing persons, but he does still keep an eye on the corruption going on in his former department. Detective LeDroit is very much a goody-goody moral detective. I feel like he should probably go and work for internal affairs, just that department that wants everything to be on the straight and narrow. And that's not a bad thing. That is not a bad thing, okay? I would also say that from the pilot episode, it's clear that Detective LeDroit is fixated on a nightclub called The Lux. Specifically, someone called Gator and two undercover vice officers, Lieutenant Noakes and Detective Kennedy. We watch as LaJoy walks into the Lux and illegally records snippets of conversations that he hears. He then later on goes back to the precinct and takes the recording and adds it to a pile of other recordings. So yes, there is definitely something obsessive or some sort of history between the Lux and Detective LaJoy. LaJoy also doesn't seem to trust Vincent Anderson, and, well, valid. And Anderson has a secret life. His colleagues are trying to set him up with a woman in the office, but he lives with a man. So we don't know yet from the pilot episode what his relationship is with this man, how they met, what is going on, but that is something that he very much keeps to himself. And the final character to mention is Edgar Anderson. And I would say that there's something melancholic about Edgar Anderson. He doesn't have the happy-go-lucky or restless nature of a boy his age. I believe he is 9. He seems fixated on Eric, his new idea for a puppet. He is observant as we see the world through his eyes in the opening 10 minutes and at various other moments before he disappears. We see as he notices graffiti in the street that might end up being relevant and a stranger outside of the nightclub, The Lux, and how his dad behaves, especially with his mother, Cassie. So he sees a lot and he's absorbed a lot. And so maybe he has seen something that he shouldn't. Or maybe he's just sick of it and decided to up sticks. Nah, I doubt it. Okay, moving on to the antagonists, or I should say the suspects. My first suspect for who could be involved in the disappearance of Edgar Anderson is George, who is the building maintenance man who watches as Edgar turns the corner and disappears from sight. And this could just be the camera tricking us into making us think that George is potentially the bad guy. But I mean, the way they're lingering and the music that they're playing is just making me feel suspicious. The next suspect is a man in a truck who seems to be watching Edgar as he leaves his house and goes to school. And we watch as he starts his engine just as Edgar rounds the corner and disappears from George's sight. Later on in the episode, however, we learn that this man in the truck is Sebastian and he is having an affair with Cassie Anderson. My next suspect is the Lux nightclub and anybody who is involved with the nightclub itself. So that is a criminal called Gator and the undercover vice officers, Lieutenant Noakes and Detective Kennedy. For all I know, all of these suspects listed could all have their own secrets that they just don't want getting out, and protecting that makes them look like a suspect. But that's what we're working with so far in terms of characters / antagonists / suspects for the crime drama thriller Eric on Netflix. And now it's time for a quick interlude to see what TV and film life is looking like beyond the pilot principle. Starting with books. And yes, I will persist with mentioning the books I have read or haven't read until I push through with this lull. So I am currently still reading The Remains of the Day by Kaizu Ishiguro, and that's okay because I vowed to finish this book and 2 others by the end of June. That's right, I've said it here, it's gonna happen. Come at me if it doesn't. Okay, moving on to film, and May was dedicated to taking part in a movie day in the month of May, which is my annual movie watching, aka watch list clearing challenge, where I just, as the name states, try to watch 31 movies in the month of May and just clear my watch lists across various platforms. That doesn't mean I just only have to watch movies on my watch list. I could also go and watch movies in the cinema, but it's just a big movie celebrating month. So with that explanation out of the way, in May, I did manage to watch a total of 35 movies, which isn't my best, but isn't my worst. So I'm very pleased with myself. And from 10 to 1, here are the top 10 movies that I watched in May. Belfast, Joyride, The Whale, Anatomy of a Fall, Women Talking, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, What's Eating Gilbert Grape, The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar, Moonlight, and Red, White, and Royal Blue. So if you haven't seen any of those films and they've been lingering on your watch lists, I would recommend going to see it ASAP and let me know what you think. In terms of my television watching, I did finish watching Red Eye and The Red King, which I have done pilot reviews for. They were both very different programs, but they were both very enjoyable in their own way. And now I need to play catch up on a litany of programs. So off the top of my head, I need to now catch up on Blood of Zeus Season 2, The Dead Boys Detective, Bridgerton Series 3, X-Men 97, and I need to give Episode 2 of The Gathering a chance as well. So Let's just say after a movie day in the month of May, I am looking forward to trying to get back to normal with my film watching, my TV watching, and my book reading. Right, before we head back in, don't forget to hit follow for the pod. Then come and find me over on Instagram and Twitter/X at Pilot Principal and TikTok at A Writer of Sorts, where we can chat about the latest in film and TV and books. In terms of what I liked about the pilot episode, episode 1 of Eric, I will say for me, I liked that Vincent Anderson was a piece of shit from all angles. I did not like the man at all. There was nothing redeeming about him or his character in the first episode whatsoever. He was incredibly, incredibly annoying, was self-sabotaging, got in his own way, and was horrible to his wife and his child. And I always find it fascinating when those sorts of protagonists, those unlikable human beings, are the heroes or the anti-heroes. And those are the ones that you follow for the length of a series or a film. So I'm really interested to see how they possibly either make him redeemable or still allow him to both have a hero's journey and a villain's journey. Yeah, that's what I find fascinating about all of this. Does Vincent deserve a happy ending because he's a horrible person? The Pilot Principle. Come for the pilot reviews, stay for the philosophy. Okay, now in terms of what I didn't quite like about the pilot episode, episode 1, the opening was slow. To be honest with you, I was bored. And yes, that very, very first minute where Vincent Anderson is giving an appeal about his missing son sort of hooks you in. But it's an easy cheat. I think I've seen it in at least 2 out of 3 of the last pilots that I've reviewed on this podcast. It's so easily done. It's not exactly the most creative decision that you could go for. And yeah, the opening was just really, really boring. I don't think it got interesting until at least 20 minutes in. And so, in a sense, the balance just fell off because the second half felt full to the point of bursting with information, and I wish we had longer to digest everything. And we could have done if the action and the story and the movement started slightly earlier on in the episode. I mean, it's 53 minutes. Why are we entering Act 2 at the 20-minute mark? Personally, that doesn't make any sense to me. Now, before we get to that all-important question, let's rewind and check off a few things. Firstly, a reminder of the pilot synopsis. Vincent's son Edgar has an idea for Good Day Sunshine's new puppet, but before he can convince his father, the boy disappears on the way to school. I would say this pilot synopsis scratches the surface, barely scratches the surface. Yes, Edgar does in fact have an idea for a new puppet for his dad's show, which he does kind of pitch to his dad, who basically has zero interest in it whatsoever. And yes, he disappears on the way to school, but like, there's more to it. Like, as somebody coming into the program, I don't have any context of what Good Day Sunshine is. And having watched the episode, I'm wondering where a mention of Detective LeDroit is. So those are the 2 things that I would change about this pilot synopsis. I thought the writing was good. I liked that Edgar Anderson doesn't really say much. We see a lot of what he sees, but we don't actually hear a lot of what he thinks or feels. The setting, we get a good sense of it being in the 80s, but not much context of it being New York specifically. But again, that's just me splitting hairs. In terms of the pace, I didn't think it was great. The start was too slow. The ending felt too quick. Not a good sense of balance for me. Now, in terms of the end of episode hook, Detective LeDroit listens to the recording he illegally made while he was roaming around the Lux, and he thinks he's overheard something. We watch one of the drunk vice officers that he is suspicious of, detective or lieutenant or something, Kennedy. We watch him get run over and die. And a drunk Vincent starts seeing Eric. Eric, as in the puppet that his son had an idea for, has physically materialized and says to him, "Get your shit together, arsehole. Let's go find your effing kid." And the final scene of the pilot episode is Edgar's jacket, which is lying on the ground in the dark, alone. Now, in terms of the serial arc, I'm wondering, where is Edgar? Did he run or was he taken? If he was taken, why? Was it a coincidence or was he kidnapped for a reason? I mean, his grandfather is a wealthy property tycoon. His dad is the creator of apparently a really popular puppet show. Who's to say? Now, the series synopsis does say that 2 kids have gone missing, so that does eventually need to tie into the series arc, but it sounds like from what Detective LeDroit possibly overhears in his illegal recordings at the Lux, that something sinister is afoot. Now there's only one question left to ask. Will I be continuing with Eric? Pause for dramatic effect. Reluctantly, yes, and here is why. Ultimately, except for the big puppet Eric showing up at the end, it's not that interesting. However, I do like Abi Morgan, and I know her shows can be a bit of a slow burn, so I do want to at least give the second episode a chance. Benedict Cumberbatch's Vincent Anderson was really well played, and I want to know why he's such a prick and what he's keeping inside. That's on the brink of spilling out onto everyone else around him. There is a clue that Detective LeDroit hears that's making me think that the series will take a really dark turn. And I'm not going to lie to you, I am morbidly curious to know how dark this is going to get. And yes, what the actual fudge cake with the puppet, how is that going to work? Presumably only Vincent is seeing the giant puppet and nobody else will see him, but why is he seeing it? The final reason that I'm kind of on the fence is that, oddly enough, the series doesn't visually look as gritty as the direction I feel like the program is going to go in. From the pilot episode, Eric is a bit mid. If I had a whole litany of other shows on my plate, I might have gone with a full-on no in terms of continuing with the series. But I don't have much to watch right now, so lay it on me. Now, in terms of a pilot score, I will be giving episode 1 of Eric a 3 out of 5. I thought there was some really good character building in the pilot episode, specifically with Vincent Anderson. I mean, we understood who that man was in the first 10 minutes. Great. I think the direction was really well done when it came to Edgar, who doesn't speak a lot, but sees a lot. And I felt like there were a lot of hints laid out throughout the pilot episode for us to pick up on if we were paying close enough attention. So even though the pacing wasn't quite there for me and the writing was so-so, I think those other elements kept it afloat. Now that we've hashed out the fundamental principles, will you be giving the pilot episode a watch? Or have you already binged every episode of Eric? You can let me know over on Threads, Instagram, or Twitter/X at Pilot Principle, or on TikTok at A Writer of Sorts. Don't forget to follow the Pilot Principle on your audio streamer of choice, and I will catch you on the next episode. Aww.